Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay,
I'm Charlie.
and today we're going to be talking about emotional safety in relationship, and more importantly, are you a safe partner in relationship? I think often this is a case of like people have some blind spots here, and I think this is going to be a really juicy conversation around speaking to maybe some blind spots for all of us, including myself, around relationship.
I think blind spot is a really good word to use there because I think we can get really over focused on how the other is showing up. Is my partner being safe? You're not being safe. I don't feel safe, without really stopping to think if we actually are safe ourselves. And because I can just speak for women, because we feel like, well, I'm smaller than you and I can't possibly bring you any physical harm, like I'm not. Maybe we don't see ourselves as being unsafe, but I think emotionally we can be really unsafe.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And the same for guys is like, I think often at times we kind of, and I'll speak for most men, is just like maybe don't quite know how to say how we feel. And so there's a tendency to try and not get it right and then shut down and kind of stonewall. And it's not stonewalling as in, I'm going to do that to be better than you or to hurt you. It's like, I just don't know. And every time I bring something, I kind of fuck it up in a way. And it's just actually, I don't really know how to talk about a certain topic. It doesn't go well.
So I think it's like the nuance of safety in relationship, right? Because often we're showing up in a way where we're not being safe for our partner because we're attempting to create safety for ourselves. So with the example that you just gave of the man who's like, well, I just don't even know how to share, so I won't. He's just trying to protect himself and create safety here. And in so doing, it's no longer safe for his partner to share. So that's the thing. When we're activated or triggered, usually whatever the behavior looks like, the motive driving it is just trying to bring our own nervous system back to a sense of safety. Mm-hmm. Like someone who is anxious, who is like leaning towards, they're trying to create safety. And someone who's avoidant, who's like, I've got to get out of here. Those behaviors look so different, but it's just they're the two sides of the same coin, trying to create our own internal safety, and that can often create a lack of safety for the other.
Totally. And I think adding to that, what contributes to a build-up of water under the bridge in relationship is the criticism in a way of like where we're trying to bring something to our partner or we're just being ourselves and we feel maybe a bit criticized by one another. And that starts to create a little bit of like unsureness or non-acceptance into the relationship. And for each of the people in that relationship, they might start to feel like, oh, I can't just quite be myself. I feel like I can't do that. I'm going to get criticized for how I am, And bless you.
Bless me.
And I think that's something that we I feel like from early on in our relationship, we made it like a pact and an agreement with each other that we wouldn't kind of do that. I feel like I'm pretty judgy on the road and around and just with people in general. I notice myself that and you reflect that, but I don't bring that to you. I've really known that in my relationship with you. I don't feel like I'm like criticizing or critical of you. I actually feel like a lot of the time it's just like, oh, I love her. I don't have that with you. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I definitely feel very safe in this relationship because I don't feel criticized or made wrong. I suppose if we can use our own relationship as an example, is the times when you can be defensive.
Yes.
And that's really the only time I can think of where I ever feel not safe. And when I say not safe, I almost want to put air quotes around it because it's not that I feel physically unsafe, but it's like emotionally, it's just like, well, if you're being defensive, I'm kind of backed into a corner.
Yeah.
It's not a safe space to share. And so often partners, same as criticism, they're criticizing or they're being defensive. If their partner brings a trigger, they can't actually hold the space for it because it activates something inside of them, which means that that immediately creates like lack of safety.
Definitely. And it's so automatic. Like I think about, for me, having the experience of feeling defensive about myself or to protect myself, it's never to hurt the other. Like if you think about even the word of being defensive, it's kind of like feeling like you're being attacked.
Yes.
You know? So it's just like, I need to remember that, you know, in my relationship, and especially in particular with you, it's like, you're not attacking me. You're just bringing something. What actually pretty much always, and I say this to men all the time, is what is being attacked or what is being challenged right now is most likely your ego.
Always your ego.
So it's like, if you feel like you need to defend or be defensive, what false self are you protecting? And when they think of that, they can actually start to like look at it a bit more.
Well, I think it's to know for yourself, if you've gone into defense, you've gone into an unconscious reactive pattern. You're in a program. You know, like when you're truly present, there's never really anything to defend. You can be curious. Even if you were telling me you're blue, and I'm like, definitely not blue. If I could, I'd be like, oh, that's so interesting that you're bringing that to me. Like, I don't agree with that, but I could hold your projection and explore it with you. But if I was like, I'm not fucking blue, it's like there's something that you've like really hit up against something in me, and it's like, why did that activate me so much? So when we're being defensive, we've bought into our own unconditioning, like our own unconscious programming, conditioning.
I had it this morning. I remember we got up, we did coffee, we did poetry in bed, little sweet little morning. And then we started to get ready to go. And then you came out of the room and you were like, how are you? And I was like, what? And like instantly, I didn't feel defensive, but I was just like, why are you asking me that? And it made me like, it must have triggered something in me, because I felt not in particular defensive, but I felt like however I was being, it landed as criticism or defense or something back towards you that you didn't ever intend. And
So by me asking, how are you, you made it mean how you were being was not okay. Like I was not okay with the way that you were being. That's why I asked.
potentially, or it was like we just hung out for like a whole hour. I've been with you the whole time, like how it was kind of like, it kind of threw me a bit. It actually had me think, oh, is Charlotte okay? And is it an unconscious thought of like, I'm asking him how he is because I want to express actually how I am. I have no idea, but all I can own is that I didn't hold it very well and I sounded defensive, you know? And just in those moments, it's just like, I just know straight away that I'm like, I am actually good. I love you. There's no problem, but I feel like I've been a problem. So I just apologized. I'm like, I'm sorry, kept my hands open, and eventually like you came in, you know? But I just really get that. For some of us in relationship, something can happen and it's very automatic, you know? And these are the things that we're typically talking about when it becomes like a conversation around being like emotionally safe in relationship, which I guess this topic is sort of covering. Because I think to me, like physical safety in relationship is a given. Like you kind of
should be.
Yeah, well, if you're in relationship with someone that's not physically safe, then that's probably a relationship that I would dare say is like agreements need to be made, therapy needs to happen, and whatever's going on for each of the individuals such that they're either putting up with it or inflicting physical abuse just like needs to stop, you know, big time.
So in terms of emotional safety, because I think we've really covered what creates the lack of safety, the criticism, the defensiveness.
We did talk about contempt as well before we jumped on, and it was just more around like, we just kind of discussed it more like superiority. Well, I definitely see that in couples, in certain couples, where one person feels further along and they have an air of like, I've done more work and I'm more integrated. Let's see. We put incense on, but we
That
shut the door.
incense is actually a problem
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
It's like killing me.
That's okay.
Oh,
we
is
won't.
it?
We won't use it again. We'll definitely got to have the windows and doors open.
Maybe, is it going?
It's finished.
Yeah, it's
So-
really not good.
Yeah. So, but coming back to that, it's like, how can we have like an air of like equals and curiosity and leaning in? Because I feel like when one person in the relationship starts to act or be in a way that's more superior, that creates water under the bridge very quickly. And especially, I think it goes both ways. I think sometimes I watch this in men, they get with a really strong woman and pedestal her because she knows more than me or she's further along, and look up to and get almost coached by their partner. And I think that is a slippery slope for a power dynamic in relationship. We kind of don't want to be dating our mum and don't want to be dating our therapist either. You know, like, not a good idea. So
Is there anything else that you feel like creates lack of safety? So there's contempt, there is the defensiveness, there's criticism. What else?
stonewalling.
Stonewalling for sure,
Yeah.
shutting down.
Yeah, and I think that typically comes later in relationship, is that typically once the criticism or the contempt, those sorts of things happen, stonewalling is, I've attempted to share myself and do things and it doesn't seem to work. So it's not something that happens straight away in that sense. It's actually something that happens over time where I've really tried with this and now I just couldn't even be bothered.
I see stonewalling a little different. I feel like, I just know for myself, I used to stonewall, and it wasn't because I tried so hard and I'd given up. It was just my way to protect myself was to go in, or not, it wasn't even a conscious choice, but it was kind of like a freeze or a collapse. And so I would just withdraw from communication. And it wasn't because I had tried so hard, it was because my nervous system had actually just gone into a freeze state.
Yeah, well, in that case then, I think that's an important acknowledgement, is that I feel like that's unconscious. I don't feel like that's a choice, whereas I feel like stonewalling is more of a choice. Like, I'm choosing to do this.
Well,
because
it's like,
not
I think
working.
it could be argued, not to argue, but with all of these patterns that show up in relationship, whether it's stonewalling or gaslighting or narcissism or abuse, we can say it's a choice. And like, I really love responsibility in relationship, but we're always, like, these behaviors are always being driven from these programs that are like so deep in our unconscious.
Yeah.
So there's this debate around how much choice we have around it.
Yeah, that's
Because
so
we're always
true.
trying to protect ourselves. Like, we're always just trying to create a sense of safety internally. Like, we'll stonewall, and even though it can be this, it's this really unproductive choice, but it's the only strategy that we actually have.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that because I know I've spoken to it in other podcast episodes. It's around just like the feeling of overwhelm. When we're emotionally unsafe, we can go into overwhelm, and I just always name it as fight, flight, freeze, or please. And knowing that, you know, we might go on the attack. When we feel overwhelmed, we become more expressive, you know, and I won't say it's typical of women. I'll just say it's more common for women to be expressive about when they are upset or they are unhappy with something. They're more likely to verbalize it and have it be known. And I think in that I think it's a good thing that women do that. I wish men would do that more, but I think both parties need to make sure that when they are doing that, they're doing it in a way that has responsibility and ownership in it as well, such that the other person can hear it and feel safe in the receivership of their partner's expressiveness and not just being dumped on. Yeah. So yeah, just as far as like the disassociation part, you know, which stonewalling can seem like an avenue to do. It's like, oh, I can't run away, so I'll just shut down, you know? And that goes the same thing, I think, is really important for couples to know, is like wanting to run is like running doesn't mean physically running. Running is like hanging up the phone or, you know, moving into another room or walking away, and just those sorts of things of like lack of eye contact, you know, whatever it might be that feels like their partner is like emotionally distancing themselves as well as physically. So I think that's something to sort of note as well.
Is there anything else that you feel like creates that like lack of safety?
Yeah.
I think it's, when we're talking about emotional safety, it's really about, if you bring me a trigger, if something's going on for you and you have something that you want to share, for me to be safe for you, it means that I have capacity to hold it.
Yeah.
Like, can I hold space for your trigger without making it mean something about me, even if it is about me, without taking it personally, even if it is personal, and just without then adding my own trigger on top? Because that's how I really see emotional safety. It's one partner brings a trigger and then the other one falls into trigger, and it's like, well, we're not a safe harbor for our partner to come and like be their authentic selves and express themselves. And yes, there needs to be responsibility in the way that we share our big feelings. But it's like, are we actually able to hold space for our partner's trigger in a way that like allows them to feel safe enough to share?
Yeah. And I guess that's always that question is like, hey, can you hold something? You know, I need to ask you something, or I need to share something with you. Can you hold it? It's like always asking for permission first to allow our partner to be ready to receive whatever it is, you know, and they actually do take a moment. I think that's what is missing so often, is that I know in my case, it's the way I've shared in the past has not been well timed, and it kind of confirms the fact that I feel like my partner is unsafe to share with, or it doesn't work, is because I do it at a time that's not appropriate, or I do it at a time that's almost in contrast to something that they've brought. Like you said, say you want to share something with me and then I bring up something as well. It's like
Tit for tat.
yeah, it's the wrong time. It's like, you know, when is the right time? Well, typically the right time is when you're both feeling good.
Or at least one person is. One person has said, yes, I can hold this.
Yeah, and able to then share.
And then I think some of the fundamental like parts that like what creates safety in that space holding, it's being able to validate the other's experience. It's being able to actively listen and kind of mirror back what they're saying. You know, like if I share my trigger with you and you just, doesn't have to be word for word, but you mirror back the deeper truth around what I've just shared, and I feel really seen and heard and acknowledged, something in me settles. There's like, in that being seen, my nervous system, there's like a little like internal cohesion that kind of happens. And it's just, it might not resolve my trigger altogether, but it's like, yeah, that's right. Like, you got it. You heard me.
Yeah.
I think that really creates safety.
Yeah, definitely. What else? Is there anything else that sort of creates a lot of safety? I think I'm just like, I don't know when we're going to fit this in, but I just realized like for some couples, it's like they don't necessarily talk to each other about a lot of things. And so maybe it's like, who's safe to talk to in the relationship? If it's somebody outside of it, and does that feel safe as well? Because I think we're going to need to talk about that as well. It's like, who else are we talking to about our relationship? Because that can feel very unsafe for people in relationship. I hear that all the time. It's like men feeling unsafe in their relationship because their partner goes and talks to all their friends about their relationship. And it's just like, well, I think it's reasonable to talk to your, like, whatever's going on for you in your life to your friends if they're safe around it, as so long as we're using I language. As far as like the issue that I'm having right now in my relationship is I'm dealing with this thing that I do. I'm not going to talk to my mates about something that you're doing, because I feel like that's unfair.
Well, it's just the thing that happens when we go to our friends and complain about our partner, especially if our friends, say, don't have like a therapeutic background or they're not into personal development. in the way that we are, you know, like just, so I go away and I'm like, fucking Lindsay, blah, 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 blah. My friend then has a picture of you. And then I come back and heal and repair with you. And then I go back to my friend and I'm like, oh, we're good now. And they're like, they're still stuck on that picture that I created. So it's just, and I've had this in the past, like when I had more toxic relationships, I'd keep going back to the same guy. But when we'd have these big breakdowns, I'd go bitch about it to my friends. And like they get sick of that, you know? So I think it's important to, when you're sharing with friends what's happening in your relationship, share with people that will help you be curious. You know, like there's a lot of friends that will just be like, they'll just jump on the wagon of like, he's the worst, you know? But I really appreciate the friends that I have that can also help me be responsible for my part. They'll help me be curious around, well, how am I bringing this, you know? And I feel really blessed that I do have women in my life who are as reflective as we are and help me be accountable. But I know not a lot of people have that.
Yeah. Because I'm just like really thinking about that of like, you know, what are some of the things that couples, you know, struggle to create safety around? And I think it is that, like, how do I be in relationship and how do I not just bring everything to my partner all the time? You know, sometimes it is healthy to chat to a friend or chat to somebody else. Like we don't always have this ability to share the like the unintegrated parts of ourselves. And I guess that comes back to also just thinking about it, like when we're sharing with our partner, I think it's really a good idea that we're sharing from a place of like the scar or the scab, and we're not necessarily like fully in trigger. Because I think if we're fully in trigger, we're going to likely trigger our partner as well and become both dysregulated. And I think it's, if we're holding space for our partner when they're in trigger and they're talking to us about something, that we need to be really mindful, I need to be really mindful of where my capacity is. Because I can then start to feel like I can't hold this anymore, and then it can get into an argument, you know? And I think that can create a lot of emotional unsafety with our partners, that we can hold our partner's trigger for a little bit and then we can't anymore. And an argument ensues because of it. So just really like remembering that for everyone, anyone that's listening, it's like arguments happen when both people are dysregulated. So if one is bringing a trigger and the other one's holding it, just as the holder is just to really keep on checking in with yourself that you're not past your capacity. Because that can then lead to a lot of resentment, contempt, those sorts of things. Creates a lot of water under the bridge. Yeah. Endless space holding, not a good idea. Not a good idea. I think if that's the case in your relationship, that you are constantly in process or constantly in a loop, I think it's wise to then probably see somebody that's a professional to look at the dynamic that's playing out. You know, and I think that's probably a good thing too, is like when to refer out. When is it just something that we can manage, and when is it something that we might need a couples counselor or a therapist to have a look at as well? What do you think around that?
I think as soon as something is looping, then it needs eyes on it. And like men can take their stuff to men's work, women can take it to women's circle, and usually those spaces can help you be reflective. They're not just going to be gossipy. But yeah, I think getting a therapist involved, like we sought out counsel as soon as we had our first bump.
Yeah.
Because we both don't buy into the stigma that therapy is for broken couples, you know, like we all know we have blind spots and stuff's going to play out. So it's just, yeah, I think having a third pair of eyes, unbiased eyes on the triggers that seem to be looping, is just smart business.
Yeah. So is there anything else as far as like how to become a safer partner in
The
relation?
safest thing you can do for your partner and your relationship is work on your own nervous system. It's like to really make sure that you're taking time daily to create a sense of regulation in your own body, like internal housekeeping. That's what I teach women. It's just like it starts there. It always starts with you. It starts with your own nervous system. Because how can you co-regulate with someone if you're dropping into fight and flight just so easily?
Yeah.
So it starts with you. It starts with your capacity to stay grounded in your body when the other is triggered.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think then that goes probably into just like having your own level of self-inquiry as an individual who's in relationship is like, am I curious about my own stuff such that I am safe? You know, am I a safe partner, and what am I doing to make sure that I'm, you know, living the best life and also being the best version of myself and best partner I can be? I want to be the MVP. I want to be the best partner. So, yeah, what are we all doing to make that happen?
And I think over time, in a longer term relationship where you have made the commitment, this is the one for growth and we're going to support each other through the triggers, and like safety is the byproduct of just continuing to lean in, have the hard conversations, like really calling yourself out, looking at your own stuff, being willing to like do this work together. And because over time with you, because my natural leaning, or I think everyone's natural leaning is secure, but my conditioning is more anxious and insecure. And so over time with you, I've just continued to get the evidence of how even if we have conflict, we're going to resolve it, that you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like there's so much consistency and reliability, and there's so much willingness that I now do have so much evidence that, this is safe. Now when we do have conflict come up, I can take space.
Yes.
Where I couldn't in the beginning because I didn't have any evidence that space was a good idea, you know, like, it's just going to make things worse. You're going to fall out of love with me. If we take space, then you're going to leave me somehow. And now it's like, because we keep showing up and doing our own individual work and the work on the relationship, there is so much safety.
Yeah.
I can go to bed and spend the whole night without you if something's happened. It's not like there's this thing where it's like never go to bed on a argument. It's like, maybe you do need to go to bed. Maybe you do just need to go to bed and go to sleep.
Sleep it off, come back the next day, and it's like, you're a sweetheart.
Yeah, so it's just like, that's how I know that we've created so much safety, is because I can take space from you and I don't make it mean anything. It actually is supportive.
I think too, and I don't know if I mentioned it or if we spoke about it before the podcast started, but just around like being an emotionally safe partner is like knowing that when we argue, we definitely stick to one topic. We try not to bring up the past. So there's a few things that I just want to really drive home, that it's like being an emotionally safe partner is we're not name calling each other.
There's no name calling.
Yeah, exactly. So we keep respect for one another. We try and keep the safety for one another. You know, we don't yell at each other. We don't name call. We don't, bring up the past or bring up unrelated things to sort of like stack it on or pile on. Not manipulating or using sex or jealousy or anything.
Or tears.
Yeah, or like emotionally crying to sort of get our way or anything like that. I think, you know, even trying to repair too fast, it's like we've really learnt over, you know, our years of working through this stuff and getting the skills, is like I think there's a bunch of almost unspoken rules that we have, but we've made a lot of agreements around how we're going to be with each other. And I think that goes for having a conflict plan as well, which we've spoken to at length in other episodes. But it's just like knowing that we're going to have conflict. How can we make agreements such that the conflict can have a lot of safety in it, you know, so it can be emotionally safe in relationship?
I just want to add, because I think one of the best things that you can do, aside from like learning these skills, is just picking a partner that's epic, you know, because when we have conflict, even if I'm triggered, I have this voice in my head that tells me that I can't push it too far with you. Like I can't do what I used to do in the past because you won't stick around for it. And there's a part of me that knows that. There's like, it doesn't matter how triggered I am. It's just like this little wise part that's just like, not with him. Like you can't do this with him. It's the part that makes me lean into repair quicker and make sure that I'm not like escalating it too far, you know? So it's like when you're in a more toxic relationship, this more toxic version of you comes out because there's not really the consequences, because you both keep just going back in. But it's like because of the way you are, it kind of calls me forward. Like I'm showing up way
your best
more.
behaviour.
I'm on my best behavior, but it feels much more natural.
Yeah.
But it's like I am a safe partner with you because that is how I'm actually a match for you.
Okay, that makes a
that
lot
make
of sense.
sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that then for the listeners is like,
Pick an epic partner. Have
Yeah.
discernment.
if this is the person that you're playing for keeps,
treat
then-
them with respect.
yeah, like
Yeah.
don't do anything that's going to create damage. You know, conflict creates clarity. Don't make your conflict create damage in the relationship. It's so much harder to repair. It's like it takes an instant to damage something and it takes a long time to heal something. You know, is how I think about it with the body. You know, you cut yourself and it takes a millisecond, but it takes weeks to heal it properly. And the same thing for a relationship. It's like, why would I damage something and then have to work twice as hard to try and make it just as good as it used to be? Like, we don't want to be doing that. And that's a really good point that you mentioned, just around really, if this is the person that you're going to be with, and if you're not, and it's bringing out the worst in you, then that is definitely for you to decide on, like, what kind of relationship standard are you up for? And again, we've covered that at length in other episodes, so won't go into the depths of that, but yeah, love you, Critter.
Does that feel complete for you?
That feels like we covered lots today. So for the listeners out there,
I think the main thing, it's like we get really preoccupied with how the other is showing up, but are we actually being safe ourselves? Are we being safe ourselves? Are we a safe harbour? Are we able to hold that space? Are we being respectful even when we're triggered?
yeah, and I guess too, I think, yeah, the bids for connection, like sometimes when our partner brings something that we don't think is vulnerable, could be really vulnerable for them. And we just brush it off or say a snide remark or whatever it is. It's like, how are we making sure that we are safe, that when our partner or our kids or our work colleague or whoever we're in relationship with, is that we're reading the room. We're getting a sense and knowing that they're someone that can come to us to share with us. I think it's really important. Cool. So how do people find out about your epic stuff?
Same as always, Instagram is the best space for me, Charlie, or I am Charlie S. Hannah.
Yeah, and if you are interested in following me, I'm Lindsay B at Instagram.
And we also have our Embodied Union account. It's not getting too much love these days, but our personal accounts are alive and well.
Yes.
And thank you for joining us for this conversation. And thank you, my love, as always.
Yeah, and don't forget the 4th of November, the Relationship Breakthrough Blueprint is coming up. Masterclass, 2 hours, 4th of November.
For men.
For men. Be there. Don't miss this one. It's going to be epic. All right.
Love you.
Love you, Critter.